guys hear me? I guess it's okay. All right, good. This talk is going to be basically about options, not necessarily concrete instructions, but options how to migrate your workloads or VMs, let's say, from either VMware or KVM to CloudStack with KVM. So we are going to discuss some migration tools and options as well that exist within CloudStack. So I was properly introduced a couple of, I guess, hours previously. I know sometimes to be a monkey, I guess. So, but yeah, it was a very funny thing for me to see. Jokes aside, a couple of words about me. So I'm working as a cloud architect at ShareBlue. I'm into IT and cloud virtualization for the last almost 20 years. Not really. I could lie and put 20 years, but I'm not. And I'm actually involved with CloudStack since version 4.0 incubating, interestingly, which is now 12 years. Time flies, I guess. And also I'm project committer and PMC member. In the meantime, I'm in my family time, if you like, I'm a father of two beautiful daughters, and I would call myself sometimes old-fashioned a petrol wheel guy. I'm not heavy into EV. I absolutely respect and admire the technology, but I also feel the freedom to express my own admire to the sound of certain engines and stuff like that. So I prefer to drive it instead of letting it drive me. Jokes aside, that's in short about me. And today we are going to cover a couple of things. So migrating from VMware or migrating VMware instances to the CloudStack with KVM. Then we will also cover migrating KVM instances from remote hosts to KVM with CloudStack. And then there are a couple of interesting things that had to be solved in various different ways for the last many years, I guess, which is if you have already existing UCloud2 image, how do you create instance in CloudStack? Now this is much more streamlined and much more easier. And you can do it in API in automated way, very fast, very nice. Additionally, how we can create, which is a new feature coming in 4.20, how we can create data volumes out of existing UCloud2 files. And we are going to also mention a couple of bonus, let's say, tools, which are not necessarily related to migration, but can help in certain situations. So, migrating VMware, I put a little bit underscore because I make boring presentations with not too much graphics. The idea is that you simply move your instances from vSphere to KVM, and to ensure that it actually will successfully boot. Otherwise, you could be just converting VMDK to UCloud2, pray to God, Allah, whatever you practice, and it will not boot actually. So again, jokes aside, how we do it in CloudStack, we basically use industry standard tool Virt V2V that actually does all the heavy modifications of the guest operating system that you would actually manually have to do, which is, for example, it modifies or injects the VirtIO drivers if they're not present, especially for Windows. Then it also ensures that these drivers are loaded during the first boot in Windows. Sometimes you will see, kernel image, something happening, Windows registry being updated in Windows, and so on and so forth. All of that in order to ensure a bootable VM, because it's nice to have a VM migrated, but does it really boot or not, I guess, is a matter of success or whatever. Now, the whole, let's say, migration of a VM from a remote vSphere to CloudStack and KVM depends obviously on the success of the Virt2V conversion. And this success or this, let's say, process depends on the host and the guest operating system heavily. That being said, we're going to share a couple of, let's say, notes or known, not issues, but known, let's say, tips, if you like, later on. But definitely the best results are observed on the EL9-based host simply because of a newer version of the Virt2V tool. Now, this feature in general was introduced in CloudStack 4.19.0. However, starting from 4.19.1, we've introduced some serious improvements in the performance in terms of how long does it take to migrate a VM by simply using Virt2V in a different way than we were previously using it. And obviously, there are a couple of simple requirements for the whole process. I'm not going to, lay it down and copy paste it for you over here, because they're all given on the official documentation on the website. It's very clear and pretty simple. Now let's see how it works. Just the high-level steps. In general, we're going to clone the VM for multiple reasons, which I'm going to explain. And by default, we are going to attempt to use the OVF tool, assuming you've actually installed those on your KVM hosts, to export the VM files to the vSphere, from vSphere, to a temporary location. And that temporary location is usually a secondary storage or a zone-wide primary storage. We can also optionally use the management server to do the same kind of export by forcing it or invoking API, let's say, or in a UI there is a tick box. But it's actually using some VMware Guru code to do that, not the OVF tool necessarily. After the, let's say, export or copy of the VMware VM to the temporary storage, we invoke Virtuv, which actually boots a VM from the VMDK, injects all the drivers, modifies registry, do the other guest OS modifications, and finally produces the QCOW2 image, which we then move to the destination primary storage. There are a couple of important settings to notice, like the timeout for the KVM conversion. If you are doing and moving a large VM, obviously, you need to increase this timeout to a pretty sane and high values. And there is also, as I mentioned, API parameter for MS, like management server, to import files. This is a bit now confusing. Import VM files, it's actually related to exporting VM files from the vSphere to the temporary storage. Unfortunately, we cannot really just go and change parameters. And also what's worth mentioning is, in case you're having issues or failed migrations, you can activate the variables logging off the tool V2V by using agent properties. Again, I'm not sharing exact lines and stuff. It's all in the documentation, but it's important to know what's possible and what's not possible. Now, this is just an example of how you can actually install OVF tool on EL-based hosts. The idea is that you need to ensure that it's in the path. So if you do a which OVF tool command, it actually gives you some kind of output. And after that, you would like to actually restart the agents. So when you restart the CloudStack agent, we will pick up those capabilities. CloudStack agent will check if the OVF tool is installed or not. And then it will store, if installed, this is some piece of the CloudStack code. It will install basically the confirmation that OVF of a certain version, we are grabbing here the third parameter, 1, 2, 3, is installed, and we store it in the host details table in the CloudStack database. The idea is, when you actually, and you'll see just now that if you don't explicitly specify hosts, you just let it convert a VM, CloudStack will loop through, let's say, 20 hosts, and maybe only 10 of them have the OVF tool installed. So if that's the case, we will only consider those 10 hosts for as the hosts who will actually execute the migration or OVF tool export from the vSphere to the temporary storage. That's basically what we do. If there are no hosts, we would automatically fail bail to the management server doing its job through the VMware Guru code. But if you invoke with the OVF tool and it fails. Obviously, there is no magical retry or something like that. How it works, I've called it a demo, but because of various features which I need to explain, I'll need to make it short, and this one doesn't have an actual demo. You would like to go to the tools section, import export instances, choose the VMware as the source hypervisor, and from the drop-down menu, there are a couple of options. You want to migrate the existing instance to KVM, and then on the right, what you want to do first is to choose your destination cluster and the zone, assuming we have multiple. Completely, let's say, irrelevant of the chosen destination, you need to actually now tell CloudStack to which vCenter it should connect to list the VMs. There is this button, list VMs, over here. It can be either external CloudStack, which will be majority of the cases, or if you have already existing CloudStack installation, which is managed by the CloudStack, vSphere installation managed by the CloudStack, it will be auto-populated, but here let's assume it's external one. So you will need to populate, obviously, the vCenter IP or DNS name, data center name, username, and password. which is actually shown, let's say, over here. And finally, we would click on the list instances, and it will show you all the instances over there. And in this example, we want to migrate the Alma Linux 9 instance. So you'll be obviously choosing this one and clicking intuitively named import instance button. And yeah, after that we have something which I would now name kind of a standard import VM UI or a wizard, which you will see it with other features as well. On the left, we extract existing values from the vSphere. There is a specific reason why this is 0 gigahertz. It's not a bug. But certainly, you will see number of CPUs, amount of memory, number of network cards, and so on and so forth. And then, obviously, you want to give it a host name and everything else. If you don't define domain and then account within the domain, or if you don't define project, then obviously this VM will be important for the, we say, caller account, which is you as the cloud admin, but you certainly want to obviously import this VM, for example, for some other user, or you might want to choose a project into which the VM will be imported, basically who's becoming the owner of the VM. Now, this screenshot is from the version 4.20, which is not yet out, but we've decoupled a couple of options, a couple of actions actually, which is exporting the VMware files to a temporary storage. Can be done by either management server or some KVM host. Then you can choose which KVM host will do the Virtu-E conversion. And finally, you can choose which KVM host in the destination cluster will copy the final lookout to onto the primary storage. The reason for this is that people mostly in these days, or in some recent projects that we had, in shade blue, they choose simply Ubuntu because they are not sure of the future of the EL9-based host. So basically, they want Ubuntu, but then the success rates of the conversion using Ubuntu hosts are less than those of EL9. So here now you can actually use additional EL9 hosts, which have to be in their own cluster, to convert a VM and run it in CloudStack, but you want them to run in a different Ubuntu cluster, which has some limitations. So that's something we've actually enabled now in the 4.20, and I think it's going to be a good stuff. Obviously, besides some main things, you need to define the compute offerings. You want to map certain network cards. Here you can see we extract the VLAN from the vSphere, and then ideally, or not, depending on your requirements, you would obviously map it, this specific network card, network adapter number 1. There might be multiple of them. You will map them, each of them, to a different network. We have here, let's say, a API parameter which has really done, you would agree, a really stupid name, to put it politely. Allow duplicate MAC addresses. It actually doesn't allow duplicate MAC addresses. CloudStack doesn't allow you to do that, but the idea, which we will improve the description here, is if that VM is, for example, already managed by CloudStack, or in short, if it has the same MAC address that already exists in CloudStack database, you cannot create a VM with the same MAC address. Well, this will allow you to, or allow CloudStack, instruct CloudStack to generate automatically a random MAC address for the VM that's going to be created from this one. So that's pretty much it. If you click OK, the whole process is started. You can monitor it either via logs, or if you really do a lot of alcohol, you can just sit here and watch the screen converting for 15 or 20 minutes, which is something you don't want to do. But that's pretty much it. That's the process of how you do it. Now, a couple of notes from the experience working with customers. As I already mentioned, the EL9 hosts will have better success rate. So definitely you want to probably try to avoid Ubuntu, or try it and see maybe for your workload it works fine. For newer Windows Server installations, you would need UEFI and secure boots. You need to ensure that you configure your KVM host to support running VMs with UEFI instead of BIOS. Also, we've seen on Ubuntu Virtu-E complaining about missing certain exe file. So there is basically this, I think, guy from, well, on GitHub that has a solution for that, so we don't need to dig further. And finally, for those of you who are migrating from the vCloud Director, as several things are getting exponentially more interesting, or like my former colleague Doug used to say, sucks to be you. There is a reason for that, obviously, and the reason is that you need to move away from the SDN-based NS6 networking, where you have old ferries and whatever, tooth ferries doing the networking part. I'm joking, of course. Moving to a more simple networking based on VLANs and VXLANs and CloudStack. So that's a project on its own, and then after you reconfigure your, let's say, networking, either as a first step, you simplify networking, you move to old-fashioned, router using whatever appliances, then you can actually, it's very easy to just move. So the labor of moving the VMs is something a relatively stupid guy like me can do, but the whole networking reconfiguration if you're using NSX is a little bit of challenge, but of course can be done. So that's mainly it for the VMware to KVM. I'm monitoring my time so Dan doesn't start screaming at me. Let's move to migrating. Let's see how to migrate instances from remote KVM hosts. This feature was introduced simply because some people were having external KVM hosts. They wanted to somehow import instances, and basically since there is indefinite number of combinations of how you do networking and with all kind of things in KVM, we actually say we are not going to just import it, ingest it, we are actually going to copy it over, migrate it. So any KVM host that's running libvirt, we can actually connect to it. We need to activate the listen TCP option on a default port in the libvirt. And instances must be in a stop state for a successful conversion. We will connect via libvirt list instances, invoke in short, the conversion to QCOW2, and eventually we'll be connecting to the destination remote KVM host on SSH port 22 to SCP over the file. Again, the guest file should be shut down gracefully, otherwise you might have issues doing a successful copy or import of the VM if you like. Just for the sake of, if you have nothing else to do at the moment, you can list the APIs. There are a couple of APIs basically that we use. That's the list VM for import, which is sent against executed against the libvirt to list the VMs, and finally the import VM API, which is used both for vSphere to KVM migration, from KVM to KVM migration, for some other features that I'm going to explain, so you just specify different parameters. Short demo, and this one is actually really, of course, recorded demo. I was not relying on the wireless, but I've learned how to properly do a, what's the word in English, Dan? Dubbing? And there's a silent thing and you speak. Anyway, you want to click on the tools, but before doing, right? Let's list the VMs on a KVM host. We'll notice a CentOS 8 VM, which was manually created. It's in a shut off or stopped state, if you like. So if we go back to the UI, we'll go to click on tools, on import export instances. Obviously, we're going to choose the source hypervisor as KVM. And from the drop-down menu, we have a couple of things, and that's import instance from remote KVM host. Now, when you click this, you will need to obviously specify the remote host parameters like IP or DNS name, username, and password. Interestingly, these are actually not required during listing VMs via libvirt because there is no SSH authentication or anything like that. You can choose a temporary path where we will store the converted QCOW2. By default, it's /tmp folder. And when you click on fetch instances, we are going to execute API against the remote libvirt. And here is my CentOS 8 instance, which is in a shutdown state. You can notice other running instances are not listed. Click on import instances, it makes sense. And again, we get to the default UI. That's pretty much it. I'm trying to rewind a bit so I don't explain what I already kind of explained previously. I'm not sure if I can actually rewind, or can I? Seems it's not working down for me, for whatever reason. Anyway, you will get the standard. Let me just rewind back. You will get basically the standard screen like this, and you will fill in all the details. Everything stays the same as I said. You need to map network interfaces, choose compute offerings and everything else, and click OK, and then we will copy over, or let's say create, after we convert whatever source disk to QCOW2, we will copy them over via whatever steps to add primary storage, and that's pretty much it, how it works. Now, the VM will be in the stop state, of course, and you will need to start it. You can change some VM details as needed, but you'll find those details in the documentation. That's basically how it works. Now, another feature is creating an instance from the existing QCOW2 file that was previously placed on the primary storage. So you do whatever magic from whatever hypervisor, and you produce let's hope, a bootable QCOW2 file, and you place it in the root directory of the primary storage. It has to be in the root directory, as it says on the thing. So we then have the option just to point CloudStack to the QCOW2 file and to create a VM out of it. We are not moving QCOW2 files anywhere, so they are staying in the place where you, external admin, maybe have placed them. There are a couple of checks and limitations, not limitations, but technical, not even technical limitations, but checks, like, let's say, in place. They must be in the root, let's say, folder, so to say, of the storage pool, in the root of the storage pool. They may not have a backing file, must be QCOW2 format, may not be encrypted, and should not be logged by another process or used by another VM. So we do all these kind of checks before we actually try to create a VM. How it looks, I called it demo, but it's also, again, a series of screenshots. You're again going to the import-export instances button, choosing KVM as the hypervisor, and from the drop-down menu, you have two actually options: import QCOW2 from the shared storage, or import QCOW2 image from a local storage. Here we are doing the shared storage, and you will be choosing your whether the scope of the storage is cluster-wide, zone-wide. If it's cluster-wide, you will choose a zone and a cluster, and it will list you available primary storage pools. If you have multiple storage pools, you need to point on which storage pool did you previously place your QCOW2 file. And this is a free text field where you will just enter the name of the file as it exists previously, as it was placed previously on the primary storage. Click on import instance, and again, you get the usual import VM, if you like, UI or wizard. And that's pretty much it. Very simple. Now we have also added something. I think this is from 4.19.1 or so, I guess. Anyway, you should be looking forward to 4.20 release. We have option to create data volumes using existing QCOW2 files. So the idea is the same, just you don't create an instance from, or let's say using the root volume with QCOW2, you just import, so to say. When I say create, we basically reverse create database records from the existing file. Interestingly, we also support Ceph. And again, all the requirements, like for the root volumes, the volume must not be out of the root folder, it has to be in the root folder, must be QCOW2, cannot be encrypted, have backing file, and so on and so forth. When I showed some kind of a bonus question, there is also option to do the reverse, to unmanage what we call a data volume which is detached. So basically to mark it as deleted in CloudStack, but don't really delete it, so you can still play with it in the background of your storage. How you do it, again, import data volume from the tools section, import data volume. When you choose all the required parameters in the storage pool, we will automatically list the volume. You can see custom name data-volume. You can click import, and it will be, there will be actually a pop-up. If you don't want to specify account type or the disk offering, it will be important for you as a caller of the API. For different disk offerings, we use some, obviously, default disk offering that will be assigned to this disk, or you can actually choose a different one. You can optionally import this data disk for a simple account, let's say within a certain domain, or to a project in certain domain who is going to be owner of this one. So that's pretty much When it comes, you click OK, and you just reverse create database records, and your volume is ready to go. You can attach it to a VM. Right. A couple of bonus tools which are not necessarily needed for a migration project, but simply it's good to mention them. We have option to manage and unmanage VMware instances. This is from a long time ago. As of recently, we also have the same possibility for KVM. However, it's a bit in experimental state. And also what I was previously mentioning, reverse of creating a volume from existing QCloud2, you can unmanage the volume. So we'll speak about it in a second. I'm aware of the time. Good. So VMware, you can either do it when you go into a specific instance, there will be a button unmanage instance, or you can go to a central place. You will choose VMware as the source hypervisor and say manage unmanage existing instances. On the left, you have a list of unmanaged instances. So this is CloudStack installation with VMware, and somebody manually created a bunch of VMs, which, outside of the CloudStack. CloudStack is not aware of those VMs. You have the option to import them. For example, Alma Linux 9, I didn't click the radio button, so this is grayed out, but you click it, you click on the import instance, and you get, again, the standard UI for importing a VM. Opposite of that is unmanaging the instance. So again, it's the same tools, import export instances, VMware, manage and manage instances, but on the right, we list already managed instances by CloudStack. Only for in my demo installation, you would have actually probably hundreds of those. You choose the same Alma Linux which we imported previously. You click on unmanage, and you will get a nice pop-up. Are you sure you want to destroy this and blow everything in the area? Of course I want, and that's pretty much it. So that's for the VMware. Very similar screen, next one. And why is it right that I show you this and not manage KVM? It's because, as I said, it's experimental support for KVM. You can only import or manage the instances which we have previously unmanaged. So that's the reason I'm showing you the same, but just for the KVM, identical thing. You can see there are no unmanaged instances. There is only one. You can note the name, 6259. If you want to unmanage it, yes, okay, fine. And then finally, it will move from the managed, it will appear as unmanaged. And you can still click this and import the instance, and you will get, again, the standard UI for importing the VM. So that's pretty much it. And finally, the option which I mentioned is the opposite of creating a data volume out of already existing QCloud file, is actually unmanaging it or informing CloudStack it's not there anymore, but not really touching it. So this is fine if you want to simply stop managing specific volume, like you want to stop managing a VM maybe, but you don't touch it, you don't delete it really on the hypervisor. Previously, when I was speaking about unmanaging VMware or KVM instance, you simply mark it as deleted in CloudStack, and CloudStack says, okay, it's gone, but you never go to the hypervisor. We as CloudStack, we never go to the hypervisor, we never delete anything. We just let it run, and then you can play with it if you want outside of the CloudStack. And yeah, a lot of things developed in CloudStack during the last couple of years, or well, I would say a couple of months or last year. If you check number of commits in the KVM project, there is, I don't know, a couple of fold times more commits in the KVM itself. So I guess we all need to thank one very nice company. So we love you. Thank you for that. From the open source world, I'm speaking in front of the open source world. So that's pretty much it. We have a minute and a half for questions.
I have one question, if I can. Can you shout? Can you repeat?
Yeah.
We make the migration from VMware to CloudStack. And our VMs is big, 500 gigabytes and more. We can anywhere see the progress bar or percent, how many time?
Okay, yeah. So just to quickly repeat, the question is how you can see the progress of the migration of the, let's say, huge or not huge, doesn't matter, VM. There is no progress bar in the UI. There is no progress bar or progress shown in the API output. However, you can find which host is actually doing the conversion. by, I don't know, firing Ansible against different hosts or maybe checking the logs and actually find out. And then you would actually be monitoring tail -f the agent.log, the agent log on that KVM host, which will contain all the Virtu-v lines, the short format, or if you activated verbose, God forbid it's very verbose, you will actually see literally percentage of converting the disks because there is booting of the temporary VM from the VMDK, injecting drivers, this and that, and then converting that VMDK to QCOW2. That's where you will actually see very nicely human-readable format the progress of the VM migration.
My VMware admin will not want me to do anything on VMware, like cloning the machine or shutting it down or anything. Can migration be done with read-only account?
The way it's implemented right now, no. Unless the VM is actually, I clicked some button, stopped. In that case, I think we only export VM, so it is kind of a read-only process. Alternatively, obviously, you can use some inside the VM migration tool, but that's completely outside of the CloudStack. You bring a VM in CloudStack, install some agent ISO, you know, like in the old days. But the way it's currently implemented in CloudStack, no, you are not allowed to do that, or you know, you can do that this way. If you shut down the machine, then I think, if I'm not mistaken, don't quote me, but I think in that case we don't clone the VM. We just connect. You still need to provide proper credentials, which your admin will not give you again, maybe. But yeah, you need to give proper credentials so that we can actually use the OVF tool to connect and export to OVA, you know, the export to OVA action from the VMware. Sorry? Do I need credentials from guest OS? No, you don't need, the question is whether you need credentials from the guest OS. No, we just hack and do all the nested things without the owner ever knowing. Well, we don't, actually, the tool does, but you as a human don't go inside and do anything.
Last question? Two more questions.
Okay, so this one will be quick. Will there be any support for XCP-ng or Xen server-based hypervisors as a destination for migration from VMware or other platforms?
At the moment, there is nothing on the roadmap because people are predominantly choosing KVM. If I talk in front of my company, I can tell you that we have insane amount of pre-sales calls or consultancy, whatever, just to KVM. Literally nobody at the moment in the CloudStack world is choosing XCP, even though we actually had excellent relationship with the guys. It's support to hypervisor, but I'm just talking about these kind of migrations. I didn't hear a single question myself at least, that the customer wanted to move from VMware to XCP-ng, but not mostly exclusively to KVM. But at the moment, there are no plans on the roadmap for that. Maybe they will be in the future. I don't know.
Hi. First, congratulations for the tool. Looks amazing. Okay. And the second is regarding the networking. What is the default behavior when you are migrating the networking regarding the MAC addresses?
MAC addresses.
MAC addresses. You are cloning them. You are creating new ones. In our case, we have bounding operating system level that are linked to the MAC addresses. So the standard behavior is copying the MAC addresses? Or?
The standard behavior is that we copy the MAC address, and you know, in general, when you would just create a VM, not migrate, we would randomly generate and we put it inside the CloudStack database. Your question is for the migrated VMs, the default behavior is we copy over the same MAC address, which is something you obviously prefer to do. However, if it happens for some reason that this migration fails and CloudStack says, sorry, there is a duplicate, there is already unlikely, but if it happens that this MAC address is already in the database, we'll make an error, and then you have this either force button in other instances or allow duplicate MAC addresses, then it will generate a new one randomly, pretty much.
Thank you, Andrija. We're going to have...
Thank you, guys.